Is LinkedIn the ultimate tool to grow your business? Let me give you a bit of a spoiler. No, it's not.
All right. Are we done?
But it has a place in marketing your business, and that's what we're going to be talking about today.
But the worst LinkedIn advice I've ever heard, probably trying to post 7 days a week. And people have got this misconception that you just need to post every single day. Or they burn themselves out trying to achieve that goal, and it's not necessarily always the right way to go.
This is the final episode of the LinkedIn Marketing Mastery podcast. And the idea here is to share a few perspectives of people who've been using LinkedIn to market their business. And these people have been very strategically chosen, especially Alex.
Well, first of all, hi, and thank you for the invitation. I'm happy that I'm about to close the LMM series. Every ending is a new beginning, or something along those lines. And
Absolutely.
I'm very much curious to see how this unfolds.
Awesome.
Okay.
Darren, there's not much introduction needed. Darren started this podcast with me and the live events. We started live events when they were still audio events. That was a fun one. There's no such thing anymore on LinkedIn. But Darren has a very unique experience. He's been on a lot of sides of the coin. He's done recruiting, designing, and then back to recruiting. And he's been doing all of this using LinkedIn to market his businesses. And we're going to talk about exactly how. A very unique experience. So introducing Alex is a very hard thing to do because I've known Alex for quite some time now, but I still struggled to define you, Alex, which is, I suppose it's a good thing, right? You can't be defined easily. Alex is a mystical creator who helps other creators and entrepreneurs find their voice, find their mission. Yeah, he's an alchemist of sorts who helps people find their path through alignment and not just the money making, but where he blends everything. Alex, you want to correct something here or?
That sounds mysterious enough. I've always, as a young boy, I've always hated when somebody would put me in a box. So I guess that kind of ripples through even later now in life. But yeah, like there is a certain mystery to it. I wouldn't change much. I would just add that, it's both a science as well as an art. It's not like we're saying no to business principles. Those still very much apply. I'm still running a business, and there is the other side of the coin, which is, well, how do I know myself? Like, everybody on LinkedIn as well as other social media platforms says, build a brand, just be you. And that's all fine and dandy. But like, who are you anyways? How do you define yourself? How do you know who you really are? And that's really where the magic starts, right? But yeah, I'm not going to give everything away. So
Basically, we're going to be talking about how both of you and even myself, how you've used LinkedIn to market your business and how your experiences looked like and felt like. So that's basically what we're going to be touching on this episode. Darren, what is the worst LinkedIn advice you've heard?
Oh God, the worst LinkedIn advice I've ever heard, probably trying to post 7 days a week. I think people have got this misconception that you just need to post every single day. Like, don't get me wrong, at the minute I'm posting like twice a day sometimes, but like a lot of people, they try to burn themselves out trying to achieve that goal, and it's not necessarily always the right way to go. So I think, yeah, posting 7 days a week and trying to hit that target all the time is just really bad advice.
All right, I can see why. Alex, what's the worst advice you've heard?
Wow. Well, I've heard many very bad advice on LinkedIn. And yeah, I guess one of the worst things that I've run across is focusing on creating content and focusing on building like a media empire, right? Like you're trying to build Warner Bros. Instead of connecting with people and treating it as a CRM essentially.
All right, that's a good one. Honestly, I didn't even plan to answer this myself, but if I had to say something for me is it's similar to what you're saying, but it's the fact that the disconnection from putting content out there and the rest of your ecosystem. So most people don't even have an ecosystem. Actually, they refer to LinkedIn and their LinkedIn activity as their LinkedIn business. For me, that is one of the worst things you can do. Obviously, if the LinkedIn changes something, for example, you can't verify your account, and they start refusing unverified accounts, then you're gone. Your business is gone. Your entire business is gone. Or they just change something about the algorithm or how things work. I've seen this happen. Businesses in the 50K per month above that, and they just go broke from one day to the other. So yeah, that's mine. Darren has very interesting experiences with this. Darren, you've marketed different businesses on LinkedIn, and you've found clients for both, or more than both actually. If you had to summarize how to find clients for your business on LinkedIn in 2 minutes, how would you do it?
So the approach that I've got now is working best. I used to do a lot of content, and content used to get us a lot of work, but it was a lot of work to get a lot of work. But I think the best approach now for me is to very highly target your ideal clients. Like we changed our business model to a retainer model now, so we don't need like mass amount of clients. We just need like 5 or 6 consistent clients at 3K a month, and that's what we get. I think the best thing to do now is to target specific individuals or decision makers within a business that you want to work with, and don't mass outreach anymore. I don't do it anymore, like mass outreach, just trying to get as many people in as you can, like connections and DMs and all that, and just build those relationships properly. Take your time. Like it's different if you've got a low ticket offer. Everybody's in a rush all the time, and I think your business model can dictate how you approach LinkedIn. So the bigger ticket, you need less clients. If they're a retainer, you need even less clients because you start to scale the business slowly. And then that affects your approach of how your outreach is going, your outbound outreach. So I think for bigger ticket clients, it's just focus solely on quality, not quantity. For lower ticket clients, it's just spray and pray, spray and pray. I think that's the difference between the two levels.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, I think that connects a lot with how Alex approaches LinkedIn. We'll hear from Alex in a second on that, but first, I wanted to ask you something that I think is very significant here. You said that you used to put a lot of effort on content, and that used to work for you. But do you reckon that was because of the specifics of exactly the niche or the industry you were working in? Because being a designer is very easy to showcase your work, right?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily just being a designer because, like, as you know, we used to specialize in building LinkedIn profiles. Right now, building LinkedIn profiles means everybody on LinkedIn is your market. Like everybody needs a
Yeah.
profile. If they're trying to build a business, they need an optimized profile, whether, to make it look better, read better, a better what we call prospect pathway through there to push the people through the profile to the next step. Um, that was a massive market for us. So content worked, and we were able to produce a lot of shareable content like advice, tips, tricks, and that got us into the eyes of the right people. But it meant that because it was one done job, you'd work with a client, you'd never see them again. They get the profile done, they don't need anything else type thing. They just go about their day. Where the retainer model, again, coming back to that, is a lot different. Where you get one client, they stay with you. But yeah, I think for me, content, it worked really well back then. Now, not so much. It's my DM outreach that's working better than content.
So even the the content production you were doing before, it was working actually because the market was everybody. It doesn't matter because that's the hard part, right? And having the right people to read your content, because that was if you're paying for advertising, you can target to who you want, but with organic content, it's very hard.
Yeah, well, this is what I've come to sort of realize on LinkedIn. Like everybody is just in survival mode on LinkedIn, and if you can give them one little offer that they think's going to take them into that next step, that next level, everybody's biting at the bit all the time, and it's just like constantly chasing, chasing, chasing all the time. And it's like the content at the time we give a lot of tips and tricks. A lot of people who couldn't afford our services then take those tricks and go and do it for free. People who had the budget come to us and say, why would we do it? Would you pay you to do it for us and get a professionally built profile? But yeah, I just think I think the content side works for some people, it doesn't work for others, and it all depends on your offer and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I love that actually, and that's where I'm going to bring Alex into this because I know Alex has a holistic approach to business, and he's very close to the way I practice marketing. So I know specifically the way you work with LinkedIn is basically just building up those relationships, like Darren was talking about. So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and just to say that I absolutely agree with what Darren was saying in terms of it really depends on what you're trying to do, and based on that, there's going to be different strategies that actually work for you. So probably if we want to add the second worst advice that you can hear on LinkedIn is to have a silver bullet, the playbook or the strategy to follow, which is very commonplace as well. But yeah, I should probably start by saying that I don't come from a marketing background. I come from a sales background. And that is very much determining how I approached and how I started off on social media. Because I was looking at it, and I don't know whether, people, how familiar they are with the sales domain, but there was such a thing as the single tool in sales called a CRM. And a CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. And what it was basically is an Excel file where you have names, surnames, and if you're in B2B, you have a company and the position that they're working in, and you put in some context based on all of the interactions that you had with this potential customer, right? And that was really the Hail Mary of sales, where you could keep track of the chaos that was actually a part of your daily job. So I see this as a CRM. LinkedIn is much better than a CRM because you don't have to upkeep, update, and keep track of everything, what everybody's doing, because most of the people who are active, especially if that is in your target audience, the target individual that you're wanting to do business with, they will do that by themselves. So they keep you up to speed with regards to what they're doing, how they're thinking, how they're approaching life, and all of the updates are there. So this is much better than a CRM. This is actually a lifesaver for a sales individual, right? And so this is how I approach it. You mentioned it, Fran. You said a relationship building proposition. And I love that because I feel like relationship is at the core, at the crux, especially if you're in service. And I believe all three of us are in service in the service industry. This is a relationship industry, right? Everything is hinging upon relationship. So I would say social media, first and foremost, it's in the name. It's about the social part. And the media part is the second part. And how I treat media, and this is particular for me. I call myself an artist entrepreneur. And that is because I use social media as a sort of a medium to express whatever is happening in my mind. And I do that very intentionally. First of all, I do it because it's self therapeutic, because I use LinkedIn and other social media in order to help clarify what I'm thinking, how I'm thinking about it. Secondly, I'm using it to process my emotions. And thirdly, and this one is the most important, I use it to connect with others who relate to what I'm sharing, right? So it's the big filtration mechanism for people to be magnetized to what I'm going through and how I'm experiencing and how I'm describing my journey of the artist entrepreneur. And that is the conversation starter, right? But at the same time, it's self therapeutic. I can throw spaghetti at the wall. I can experiment. I can play. I get to create. And, sometimes I create for the sake of creation. It's not for the sake of, oh, this is going to be put into a very particular commercial container. No, fuck that. So that's a very unique thing that defines how I approach it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I want to backtrack a little bit before we dig deeper into this, because there's something that Darren mentioned that is very important. Even before that relationship, Darren said in different words, the offer is what defines how you can approach your marketing strategy, right? So it starts with the offer. The retainers, they make a big difference in how you approach your marketing. Because, and Darren, if you want to touch a bit on this, like with your design business, even though you had a lot of clients, you did feel that feast and famine cycle, right?
Yeah, so like we did profiles and design for about 3.5 years, and in that 3.5 years we did over 360 profiles, and most of those were like £1,500 each. As you can imagine, we did a lot of turnover. But the problem came was like, you pay a content creator to manage your content. You got a team to help with manage some of the design work. You got all that outgoing. But that billing doesn't stop. That's a constant outgoing of the business all the time, where the income was like, okay, we've got a profile to do. Now I've got to find another one, another one, another one. It's like you need to find 3, 4,
Yeah.
5 clients a week, every single week. And the problem with that is you're just constantly putting fires out, because every week you just drain from just trying to find new work. With a retainer, like I charge $4,000 a month for recruitment now, £3,000. As soon as I get one client who's on a retainer, I'm no longer in that survival mode for fighting to find clients over and over again. So I've stabilized the business financially, and now I can just take my time to build relationships and not have to rush the process of I need to find the next client, hurry and buy my stuff. When you get into that mindset of having a more stable, financially stable business, I find that you're a lot more calm, a lot more approachable, less pushy. You're less pitchy in the DMs because you're no longer trying to get that sale. You're just like having a chat. With me now, it's like, are you recruiting in 2026? What's your current pipeline looking like? And I'm, I've had like conversations now for 3 or 4 weeks with some potential prospects, and I'm not in a rush to close them because I'm just building that trust and that knowledge about their business and what they need, and and that's helped me a lot more. Where like you say with the the one and done jobs, man, it's just like it's depressing. It's really depressing. Like it's so stressful.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, for context, Darren is now in recruiting. Specifically, do you want to tell us the specifics of your business, just for context for everybody to understand why it works that way?
Yeah. So shall I give you a little bit of an overview about the business model I've decided to go with instead?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know recruitment, typically a recruiter would charge between 15 and 20% commission on a placement. So if they've got 100 grand a year role that they're recruiting for, when that role gets filled, they bill 15 to 20,000 pound or dollars, depending on what country you're in. So with recruiters, they're always fighting against other recruiters because the company's got no risk because they can put it out to like 5 agencies, and the only one that gets paid is the one that fills the role. So they've got no risk like that. But all the recruiters, the reason their commissions are so high, one, it dates back to like the 80s where they had to do newspaper ads and everything's slow and clunky. But now you've got so many recruiters fighting against each other. So the problem with that is then they have commission to high to cover the times where they don't fill those roles and somebody else fills it. So what that did then, that means the companies who are hiring, they've now got a 20% commission per role, which on 100 grand is 20,000 pound or dollars. With my model now, I do a 3,000 pound per month for 4 placements. So we cover 4 placements for 3,000 pound. If it rolls into another month, the role that doesn't get filled, we roll it into another month for free. Okay, so typically we do fill most of them within the first month. And what that means now, based on 4 roles, my business model saves about 85% in costs on recruitment for a company, which is massive. Like the one company I'm working with in South Carolina at the moment, in Korea, we've saved them about 150, 160K since November. And that's over like it's going to be 6 roles, 6,
Yeah.
7 roles. So my model now is the retainer allows me to not be in a rush because I'm not fighting against other recruiters. It means I got stable income, and it means my client gets a better service, a better relationship, and they haven't got the overhead of a commission-based recruitment company. So I don't do recruitment as such. I do talent sourcing. So my job is to find them and get them in front of the right people, where recruiters tend to do like initial interviews and all that as well. So I find them, I screen them, process them, put them in front of the hiring manager or the decision maker. They interview them. They've got control of the last part of the process. So that's how I've started to change the
Right.
recruitment industry a little bit, because I'm going for the retainer model. And since starting in November, I've had like 6 recruiters who are already transitioning to a model similar to mine because of the less stress, the
Yeah.
better relationships.
That's beautiful. So that actually illustrates what I was looking for, which is it all starts from the offer, right? So that peace of mind that you have nowadays, the fact that you can slowly build the relationships and actually do it properly, and that's where we're gonna listen to Alex how he does it, because that's I think that's very important, and it's Alex's expertise. So it starts with the. It's not because of the industry. It's not because you changed from designing to recruitment. It's because of how you positioned your offer, and actually you did position your offer completely different than most of the industry, right? So that's where it all starts, and that's where I want to now get Alex's opinion. Alex, first of all, before we even go into the relationship building aspect of this, how do you craft your offers, and do you consider all of this? And tell us a bit about your business offering and how that plays into the relationship building and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just love what Darren shared, and I'm 100% on board with that. First of all, if you don't have the space as well as the runway to feel like grounded, to feel like you can have a normal conversation and be on sales calls or in relationship building activities, very much stressed to get the sale, that's exactly the energy that you're bringing to the table, which makes the prospect on the other side, well, very skeptical because we can all feel the energetic side of it. So I build my offers or structure my business model in the same fashion. I have a similar thing, which takes about a year and a half on average. So a year and a half is the length, an average length where I will work with one particular client, sometimes even longer, sometimes shorter. It really depends on where they're at. But the real unlock for me was when I decided to structure or to productize the service rather than having I will show up and I will customize and do whatever it is that I need to do for the client. I reverse engineered that and said, okay, this is what I've made work in my process. And I distilled the frameworks, the milestones, the steps, and made it in consecutive ways in which how you would approach building a business, because all of the business building activities do have priorities, right? So it's a matter of arbitrage. So it is important how you start, it is important what you do next, and how you move the ship to its final destination, which is really launching an offering or building on top of an existing offering for my clients. So within that time, a year or a year and a half, I have sufficient amount of space to actually go really into depth. And this is something that I do, which is what I coach or what I guide my clients to do as well, to really understand what their proclivities and what their tendencies, as well as where their zone of genius lies. Because based on that, you then shape an offer that actually works with you rather than against you. The whole concept here, the whole premise is that, well, if you're not doing things that are inside of your zone of genius, if you're continuously doing things that are outside of the things that actually bring you joy and fulfillment, you're going to be stressed out and you're going to probably in a sufficient amount of time want to fire yourself, right? Because the hustle bro mentality is not really working for us in this day and age, and I think we can all feel that. So that's at the crux of it. How I love to do things is really go into depth. I like to go into the depth of the psychological motives, the north stars, the what do you really want to do. And this is more than just a business, it is a vocation. A vocation literally means, one soul's calling, what you are called to do. And that may sound a little woo woo, but that's really where we find meaning. And yeah, that's the core focus. So all of this sounds, like in your introduction, Fran, you said a little bit of an alchemist and somewhat mystical. That is the mystical part because it's not super concrete, right? So it takes time. We have to sit in silence. We have to allow and employ all of the different modalities and techniques that allow an individual's deeper unconscious stuff to surface. And then we work with those energies and we channel them into a creative venture. Yeah. So I'm not sure if this is too detailed, but that's
No,
that's
it's
really
good.
at the gist of it. Yeah.
No,
And
it's really good.
I thrive in a relationship building role. I thrive in connecting and really going deep and building breadth and depth of relationship. So this for me feels natural. And I'm not assuming that that's something that would make everybody feel comfortable. So there's potentially different ways how to approach this, right? Depending on the individual.
Yeah, that's where I want to go next. The relationship building part of it. Alex, you spoke about the crafting of the offer, which for you, it's kind of hard to define because from what I get, it's something very individual. So it's bespoke, right? The way you create that part. But we have the example from Darren, which was a very unique way to craft an offer in his own specific industry.
Like when we craft the offer, a lot of people try to craft an offer that's just going to suit the client. And the problem with that is it doesn't suit your own lifestyle. Now, I work primarily, I've got a 5-year-old daughter. We've got 2 businesses from home, and she goes to bed at 8 o'clock. So I work with US clients only because they are 5 to 6 hours behind us. So that means now when she goes to bed, I can get my work done in the evening. So the offer doesn't just work for the client, it also works for me. So it's important that it works for your lifestyle. It's all individual how you build a business in your own situation. Like if you're
It's
single,
similar.
you live on your own, you've got all the time in the world, you can do 9 till 5, you can do 12, 15 hours a day. But if you've got kids and you work from home, there's situations where you're not going to be able to work. Like my girlfriend works from 12 o'clock onwards. I tend to work in the mornings, but I've got to get the gym in that time as well. So I don't get much work done in the morning. So I do it 8 o'clock in the evening until midnight. Do you know what I mean? So that's why my business model
Yeah.
works. So I know I sort of circled back there, but I just want to sort of quickly cover that as well as part of, constructing the offer.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's very important. You actually illustrated very well what Alex was saying in theory. That's what I think where Alex thrives. It's basically the purpose first, but also lifestyle first before actually the business is built on top of it, instead of your lifestyle becoming a consequence of your business, right?
Right.
Any words you want to say to that, Alex?
Yeah, no, I just love it how Darren spoke to that. I too have 2 children. My daughter is 4, my son is 2 years old. Yeah, so we're all 3 dads here. And then if we want to be a present father, which is a very popular thing these days versus what the older generation was used to and the industrial, or let's say the peak of the industrial age, we approach things a little differently. And I too have most of my clients across across the Atlantic, which means that they typically wake up around my 2 to 3 p.m., which is where my communication part really starts. And before that, I have the pleasure to spend a lot of the time with the family. So my business, my offer, the architecture, the design is very intentional to suit my lifestyle first and foremost. Yes.
Beautiful. So now I want to talk to the relationship building part of it, because it, it starts with the offer, as we spoke, and Darren defined this very well with his examples from his past business. But now we had an episode that we spoke a lot about this. It was all about sales, and basically the idea here is that if you have to stress out to make a sale, if you need that sale, you're going to close a lot less of them than if you're actually just doing it in a relaxed manner that you don't need to close that sale, because your business will be fine if you don't. Once you step into that mentality, and I'm not a salesman, but actually I'm the opposite. That's where you did um, give your background before, Alex. So you're a salesperson, not a marketer, and your marketing expertise then comes from that, right? I'm the opposite. So I'm a marketer first and not a salesman. And I always say that the better I perform my role as a marketer, the less I have to sell. So that's where I do everything. As everybody knows, that marketing and sales go hand in hand, right? But the better your marketing, the easier your sales. And every big company knows this. So basically, now let's assume that we've got to a part where someone who's trying to build a lifestyle first, purpose first business, they found this offer and the way to work that they don't need to stress out about the sale. So they don't need to be trying to pitch someone in the DMs and get on a call in 3 messages, which is first thing I advise against, and I think both of you as well. So, Alex, how do you build that relationship? How does that work for you? Like, what does a conversation like this mean? Like, when you start a conversation, are you thinking, I think I know the answer, but are you thinking I'm going to get this person on a call and try to sell them something? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And no, I actually am the worst salesman or have become the worst salesman in, under the blue sky because I don't rush anything. I don't think I'm trying to pursue this QBR or quarterly business results or, fill the pipeline or all of those things that I was exposed to with my previous directors and presidents and whatnot, right? All of those things kind of added onto the fire, onto the oil that brought in a little bit of stress onto the salesperson as well. So I don't intend to replicate those things in my business. We do things in a relaxed way because I know that if this would be the energy from which I would approach a relationship, I would be attracting exactly the individuals who are also chasing deadlines, stressed, eager to do things quickly and sacrifice quality and depth in exchange for that. And that is just not my style. So, what happens naturally, and I spoke a little bit to that earlier when I said I use social media as a playground, as my public private journal, so that people can find resonance with how I approach things, my philosophy. This is where I share how I think about things. This is where I share my unique perspectives on the world and where I put a little bit of my personality into it. And I'm pretty much kidding around a little bit because I think I tend to be on the other side of the extreme example of really bringing a lot of personality into the mix. So obviously, naturally, a lot of the individuals would automatically be repulsed by that. And I want that to be the case because I think strong marketing needs to do that. We need to repulse as much as we need to magnetize or attract. So it just so happens that on the other side of that, when I start a conversation with an individual, chances are that they've already consumed a sufficient amount of my content, at least a couple of pieces. And no surprise, a lot of the conversations really don't start with business. They start with having a laugh. They start with taking a piss at something that we know that we both hate. It starts with sharing very personal, very life centered conversations. And that's how I start a conversation. We don't start with business. But then obviously, because I am running a business and my ideal target audience also is in the business of creating a business or revamping a business or building a new, we inevitably come to this conversation around, okay, so what are you building, right? It's just a matter of curiosity. How can I be of service? And I think, you mentioned this, Fran, in terms of marketing versus sales. I think we're all in sales essentially, and there is no time where we're not selling something. And I don't think selling or being in sales or being a salesperson is really a bad word because all of the associations to, the used car salesman or the, Jehovah's Witness coming and ringing at your doorbell on a Sunday, all of those things are off-putting to say the least. But if you treat sales first and foremost as a service to something greater than yourself, and if you do not know what that something is, well, maybe to start with, you're being in service to the clients that you choose to serve. And that's like, if you frame sales from that perspective, then everything is a curiosity. If you lead with curiosity and ask questions and really try to be helpful to the individuals that you profess to serve, then you cannot go wrong. And you can, pretty much dispose of most of the jumbo around how to make a sale or how to approach a sale or how to build a sales script so that you can lead conversations with your clients.
So you're not going to give us the 3 steps to book a sales call.
I'm not going to
Anyway,
give you the 3 steps, but if you insist on the 3 steps, I will tell you there is one place where I employ the 3 steps, which is when people decide they want to jump on a call with me autonomously by their own design, they can find my calendar booking link. And in the calendar booking link, you will find 3 questions. And those 3 questions are the 3-step process where I can gauge where an individual is at, what they're dealing with, and what the intention of the call so that we can have a directed call can actually serve the both of us.
that's brilliant. Actually, obviously I was joking, but because that is I think this is one of the biggest problems that I see on LinkedIn actually nowadays is this, especially in content. I mean, we're all trying to get someone's attention with like a little bit of like with 3 sentences and not too long because people won't read them. So this is where everything becomes so generic and like, oh, here's what you have to do: step 1, step 2, step 3. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that in marketing in general. It doesn't work like that in sales. It doesn't work like that anywhere. And that's why I think what Alex just shared here, it's much more important than any 3-step or 4-step or 5-step process, or do this after this after this. But anyway, we do have an episode with Dana earlier in the podcast where we do break down the sales strategies, how to book a sales call, and then on the sales call how to actually role played and did a fun episode there. So if you want, you can go and check the previous episodes, and if you just go to createandearn.com/SM, you'll find all the episodes there, and you can go back to check all of that. And that's one of the reasons why this is the final episode of this podcast, because this podcast was centered around LinkedIn first, as LinkedIn marketing mastery, when LinkedIn is just a platform. LinkedIn is just a medium to reach your audience. And there's a lot more to marketing. This name of this episode as well is LinkedIn the ultimate tool to grow your business. I did spoil it before and said no. It has a lot of purposes to help grow your business, but it is not the ultimate tool, not at all. Actually, there are much more important assets for your business than using LinkedIn. But we're assessing exactly how we, the three of us, use LinkedIn to grow our businesses, and what is the actual purpose, and how we can use this platform to leverage what it has best, right? Again, all of this is the last episode because I'm starting a new podcast, and it's going to be Marketing with Integrity. It's the first time I say this publicly. Didn't even think about it, but okay, that's the one. And so if you just follow this podcast, you will see and follow the link I gave before, the URL, createandearn.com/SM. You'll get to our Substack, and all over there, you'll see the announcements and the transition to the new podcast. Okay, so I want to go back to, I love what you just shared. And I think we have a really good dynamic here because Alex gives us this essence of how he does things. And now I'd like to hear from Darren how he approaches these conversations without the stress of closing a sale. Darren, you want to break it down for us?
Right. Okay. So full transparency. So I have 2 live approaches right now. One is I do use automation for outreach. Okay. It doesn't send a personalized note. It just sends a connection request. When they accept the connection request, it just says a quick question. Are you hiring in 2026? If you are, would you be open to a quick conversation? That's all it is. So all I'm asking now is, are you hiring, hiring engineers in 2026? And if they are, 9 times out of 10, they'll at least say, yeah, we are, or not quite yet. Could we have a chat maybe later on? And then the other approach is, that's how I got my first client who's still with us now, is literally cold outreach on automation. And within 4 minutes of me sending that message, or the system sending that message, within 4 minutes, he come back to me and goes, yeah, we need 6 engineers. Like, it was an instant boom, like just straight in. Like, it was so easy to get that client. Now, the other ones that take a lot more time, and give you a few examples. So there's a guy that I'm connected with now. He's based in Texas. He wears a really nice cowboy hat in his photo. My dad loves the cowboy hats. And I just reached out to him and said, oh, I love your truck. Love the cowboy hat. What truck is it? Didn't even mention recruiting. He owns a company that works with NASA, engineering with NASA. So I'm like, all I did was just start a conversation. This is like 2 months on. We're still chatting. I haven't even mentioned recruiting for him at the moment. I'm just having a conversation, we're having a laugh, and just building that. We're kind of like friends now on there. He's an older guy, he's probably like mid-60s, CEO of a company. Another guy, been connected with him for 2 months now. He rides a Harley, I ride a Harley, and I'm just like having a laugh about, how shit the weather is in UK, and the fact that we can't go out on the bike all the time, and how lucky he is over there with the weather, and, talking about bikes and, past experience and stuff. So that's my 2 approaches. Now, one's working on one side, but it's a very conversion rate, because you're sending out, 50 connection requests a week. You may be only getting 3 or 4 conversations through that, and out of those, over 3 months, closing 3 clients. Do you know what I mean? So you can see that that's a very, very low conversion rate. And I will probably circle back to some of those in the future as a proper conversation. But the ones that are going through conversation, I find it very hard to start a conversation unless I've got something I can relate to that they're doing. They're into. I can't keep a conversation going unless I've got that thing that we both like. If somebody likes a football team, you have a conversation, you just build a relationship based on you both like that football team, or you both like different football teams, and then you have a bit of a debate about who's better and the fact we're going to kick your ass next season or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's important to have those conversations, but they're a lot longer term warming up. Like I couldn't,
shared interest.
Yeah, and I couldn't go in with the kill now and just say, oh, do you want us to recruit for you? Do you talent source? And I'm like, I'm sort of waiting until the time feels right round. If they post a role now, say they post a role we've been talking 2 months, and they post a role that we need 2 engineers, I can reach out and go, oh, I saw you're looking to hire engineers. Do you want to have a chat and see if we can help you in any way? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then I can start to open that ball, but I don't want to. The clients I'm speaking to at the moment, they've got such high profile companies with NASA, different kind of space programs, not even with NASA, but other individual independent space programs, one in nuclear engineering, another one in like the green side, like wind farms and stuff like that. They've got very high profile companies. I don't want to go in for the kill and ruin that relationship. So I'm just waiting until that time's right, so I can go and just approach them and say, do you want to have a chat and see if we can help?
Yeah, you mentioned something very important there. So basically, the relationship is more important than the sale itself, right? So because and once you build that relationship, you've already started it. So at the time where you see the opportunity, they're much more likely to listen to you or to get on a call with you than with someone else who just DM them cold without the relationship being built, right? So that's a very important one, and I think, and what you said about the shared interest, like talking about shared interest, I mean, it's normal human relationship building, honestly, and people take this out of context, and they try to. I had someone approach me a while back, like, "Hi, Fran, uh, tu falas português?" And I'm like, what? And with a bunch of broken stuff in Portuguese. Oh, sorry about my Portuguese, blah blah blah. So they were trying this idea of the shared interest, and also at the same time trying to be funny about it. But like, what do you mean if I speak? I'm Portuguese. How am I not going to speak Portuguese? So like, it's such a stupid question, but because they go with this step by step process they were taught, find something that they're interested in or whatever. I mean, I'm not interested in speaking Portuguese. I grew up speaking Portuguese. Like, it makes no sense. So what Darren is saying is really important. It's like, it's genuinely wanting to have a conversation with someone with the sharing interests. Like, you're a Manchester fan. Yeah. I hate Manchester. I'm from Liverpool, but whatever. It's like, like you actually, that's how you build a relationship out in the real world when you put your feet on the grass, right? So yeah, that's really important. I love that you went in that direction, and because I do think that Alex approaches this very similar. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't necessarily speak about Harleys, and I do love cowboy hats, by the way. But for me, it's a lot easier because typically when I look at a profile of an individual, I will find telltale signs that they're either into metaphysics, philosophy, or just esoterics and things of that nature.
That's where I want to go, actually. And sorry to interrupt you. So just to guide your response in the right direction, I'd like to hear exactly how you find those topics and how you don't say stupid things like, to a Portuguese person, do you speak Portuguese?
I'm not sure I have an answer to that, but how I do approach things is, well, I know who my ideal client is, right? Typically, it's going to be an entrepreneur, maybe a serial entrepreneur. They have already built some things. It's already visible. Typically, if you do a little bit of intro, bio, profile, or some even content, if you read through it, you will see, based on how they express themselves, based on how they write, unless it's a very clear AI generated post, you will immediately see, where they are philosophically, where they're anchored, or what their world building or philosophical perspective, what their outlook on life is. And that's really my forte, right? I can go deep into philosophical conversations. I like to make jokes on all things metaphysics, spirituality, alchemy, and things of that nature. And I do enjoy talking about psychology and going deep into Jungian territory. So I can immediately tell, based on somebody's profile, whether there's a good chance that they're also, in that particular area. And that means a conversation starter is very clearly something that lends itself. We have a lot of common ground in a very quick fashion, I can tell. But even if that's not the case, just being human and making a joke, humor is usually the best way. I do intend to share that I do a lot of my comments and a lot of my content on LinkedIn through wit, through, puns, through using humor.
The pun master.
And that's that's something people can relate to. We all like to have a good laugh, right? Especially in this fast-paced AI-driven world. But yeah, does that cover it? I think
Yes.
it's pretty self-explanatory.
But I still want to go deeper on that, because basically what you're telling me is you only want to work with people who you'd relate regardless if it wasn't for business, right?
Yes, absolutely. I haven't told you that, but I do take my clients on a journey. Once we go, that's really like a 3-step process. So to boil it down, the first stage is know thyself. This is really the penultimate esoteric spiritual maxim, is knowing who you are. And if we start there, a lot of the things are much easier. And then once you do know who you are, then know thy client or thy customer, which means...
So the ICP, basically, and to put it
Yes.
into LinkedIn content words.
LinkedIn terminology, ICP.
Terminology,
exactly.
yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think that's important to be stressed out that, and I guess this is, I'm anchoring that in my own experience as a sales executive. I've been in many industries in the past and have been assigned accounts, different individuals within those accounts to work with, meaning I was not at liberty most of the time to choose who I work with as an account manager. It's a little bit different as a business developer, but as an account manager, you essentially have no choice but to make it work with the individuals that you are intended to work with. And for me, that was super stressful. For me, it was super stressful because in order to make the business, with individuals that you have absolutely nothing in common with, or even more so, that you're not on the same frequency with, that is very stressful. That is super stressful. And it wears you out because you need to project a lot more energy into keeping up a facade and finding ways how to keep the conversation going. So I flip that script around and say, well, what if you start by getting very clear around who is the individual that you actually absolutely would love to be in a relationship with, that you would love to have a friendship around, that you would actually love to see succeed in the world, right? And if you get clear around that answer, then having and building relationships is not a task. It's not something that you need to stress yourself around or put a lot of energy and approach and tactics and whatnot. It's very natural. It's very organic because those are the individuals that you actually enjoy spending time with. And it needs to be stressed that the individuals that you work with, your clients, are oftentimes the people that you will spend sometimes more time than your family with. Right.
Most people don't realize that, but we work more than we are at home with our family, right? Most people. So yes, we spend so much time with this person that it should be picked as specifically as we pick a life partner, right?
Yeah. And also, like, to give you even more context, right? I choose an adversary, right? If we imagine that life is a game, and that this is an RPG role-playing game. In every good game, you have an adversary and you have your own protagonist that you're usually playing. And the adversary is something that you choose that is absolutely against your values, your principles. It's something that you will plant a flag in and choose to die over it. And in my case, and there's many protagonists in my game world, but one of those is soulless work, right? It's the painstaking process of doing the work just in order to survive, just in order to pay the bills, just in order to whatever. That is for me an absolute existential philosophical no. It's no bueno. Easily, because of that, I can make fun of big corporations, and I do so intentionally. And I really poke the bear. I throw it under the bus. I speak against, the techno oligarchy. I speak against Microsoft, OpenAI, all of the big players that are essentially, we all know what those things are and how they're, not necessarily the most healthy of our business environments and how we approach business. So if you choose a protagonist big enough, it's almost like you're Goliath and you're David, and everybody likes to root for the underdog. And that is a way how you can rally something of a movement and really put yourself in a position where, well, we're not just serving clients here. We're actually doing something that is super fucking meaningful because we had chosen a very meaningful objective for what we are doing in life. And yeah, that's what floats my boat. And it very clearly delineates who actually is wanting to work with me and who resonates with that and who doesn't. And it takes a lot of the pressure off the table, because all of the people on the other side who actually agree with my assertion here are going to be a joy to work with. And they will say, yes, let's do it. How are we going to do it?
Yeah, disconnect some of the dots of what you were saying earlier, and I'm going to try to distill this in a more of a marketing speech. So basically, it's the common enemy, right? Once you know who you are and who you are for, and then you know who you serve, right? Now you can find a common enemy. Once you have that common enemy, it's much easier. Like, you don't just have a following, you start having fans. Those people will rally behind you against the common enemy, right? So now what you're doing is what you mentioned earlier, Alex. You're repelling as much as you're attracting. Because if you're not repelling, you're not attracting. It's much harder. But now so you need to know what you don't want, what you hate above all, and everybody else, and there's plenty who shares the same hatred. I wouldn't call it hatred,
Sentiment.
but yeah, okay, let's go with that. We'll connect with you and we'll want more from you. So I think this is really, really important. And this takes us to the next stage. Darren, you have more experience than most people on LinkedIn. You've been on LinkedIn for many years. You've done different businesses on LinkedIn. You've used LinkedIn to market different businesses. I want to phrase this correctly. And you've even spoken at events, live events, for those who don't know, about LinkedIn profile specifically. Can you share with us, like, what you've seen people doing on LinkedIn, or what you've done yourself that you wouldn't do again for one reason or another, and why?
Things that I wouldn't do anymore that I used to do, or what people shouldn't be. Do you want to know one of the worst damaging things now? Like, I use AI to create content, right? But I don't think that's anywhere near as damaging as using AI to comment on content.
Oh yeah.
Like, if there's one thing that people need to cut out completely, it's like, I'm seeing it in my content currently at the moment, and it's when you comment using AI, it's so emotionally detached from the conversation. Like, even if it's on top, it's so emotionally detached. It's got no experience. Like, right, so I use AI to create content specifically. I never comment on somebody else's content using AI. If somebody comes onto my content and puts a comment in there that's likely going to spark my aggression, because I can be very impulsive in comments when someone starts to challenge not necessarily a different opinion, but like, I'll give you an example in a minute. But I tend to use AI then to respond to that, but I always give AI the correct thing, what I want to say, so it puts it more passive, not aggressive. But like, when I started this business, I had 2 recruiters in my comments trying to shut down what I was building because it was a threat to their company because of how much I could drop costs of recruitment. Because it was really riling me up, I was using AI to write my comments back, and it controlled it to the point where that one of those guys came in my DMs. He said, "Can you help me build my business model like yours?" So I had just completely gone through 2 days of responding. But going back to the main question is, if you're commenting on other people's posts, I'll make it short, on other people's content, don't use AI. That's the main thing. But it depends how you're going to use AI with the rest of your business.
It brings us back to the idea that it's the relationship building first, right? And how are you going to build a relationship when AI is the one doing the talking for you? So one thing that you said, like that you use AI to create content. I'm not specifically in favor of that, but I have nothing against either. I'm actually building a content machine to repurpose my long form content, specifically this podcast, for example, or the next one, and Substack publications onto social media publications. So it's still my voice, but it's just distilled by AI, right? So it's not specifically what I do, but it's what we've been sharing here, and actually, it's what both of you do in a way, specifically Alex. If we look at content as a conversation starter, then AI can still do that, but then following that conversation in a way that it's not you, how are you going to connect? How are you going to find the shared interests? How are you going to show who you are so that they actually can connect with you as well?
Yeah, it's important. It's important that you always give it context. And the way I built my AI, my custom GPT, it knows everything about my history, my military service, all the experiences, my business failures. It knows everything about, if I've got a new experience within recruitment, I always put it back into its knowledge base. So it's got it to refer to like a new experience. I always update the experience part inside. And like to give you an idea, so I put a post out the other week, and it was talking about like why candidates ghost companies. They get a job offer because the company's not working fast enough. Fully AI written, it's had like 86,000 impressions in 2 weeks. It's just absolutely exploded. One of my other posts has got 370 odd likes on it, like engagements. So it can write content, but you've got to be very careful you don't just let it have the reins. I mean, you've got to really guide it. Like I always say, I tend to use Claude for content ideas. When it gives me the ideas, I then put it into ChatGPT and say, based on my experience and my target audience and what we're trying to achieve, you've got to give it what is the goal behind the content? You can't just go write me 30 posts.
Yeah.
Like what are you trying to do here? And with me, a lot of the time, it's trying to spark some kind of engagement, comments, likes, whatever, to push that content into the eyes of people who are likely going to be my client. Like I've never seen in my recruitment, not one of my clients has ever commented or liked a post. Not one of them. But they come in the DMs.
Yeah.
So it's using the
Yeah.
content to
Yeah.
force into their eyes, not necessarily to make the sale.
Also, there are businesses and businesses. Obviously, I work with a career coach for executives specifically, who barely gets the ideal client to even comment or interact with his posts, right? So it's just a conversation starter in a way, but it does work wonders. That content still brings in a lot of people into the ecosystem through the systems that we build. But a lot of people, I'm talking about organically, we can get sometimes close to 100 people in a day, or with one post onto the ecosystem, which is really good. But still, they don't interact. But they're there. They're reading it clearly because they're coming in, right?
My friend, I think it's important to understand your business model. Where is content going to be the primary driver for leads, or is it your DMs? Because if like all my recruitment cat clients come through DMs and relationships, they don't come through content. So why would I put all my time writing content when I can use AI to write that and just show that I'm active online, and then I could put my time into the DMs, the relationship building. That's where my time's spent now. Where
Yeah.
last, 2 years ago, all my time went into content because that's where our leads came from. I never spent time. You know what I was like. I never did DMs, never did connection requests. So depending on your business model, you need to understand which side are my leads likely to come from, and if that whichever way it is, then that's where you want to put your effort, because it would be a
Yeah.
waste of my time going 7 days a week trying to post. I can write all my content on a Sunday and post 30 days of content using AI, as long as it's I still read the post and make sure it's all relevant. But like, I'm not going to go spend 30 days a month posting when I can get my leads in the DMs. I may as well just not post at all if that's the case. Like,
Yeah.
it's just to
Yeah.
make sure that when people go to your profile, they can see I am active.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Can we go back to is there anything else you'd say that you wouldn't do again nowadays that you used to do on LinkedIn? And this, I'm not saying that you think it's wrong. I'm just saying that for you didn't work and you wouldn't do it again.
Not necessarily on LinkedIn. Again, I'd never have an offer now that's not on a retainer. Like, I know it's not LinkedIn specific, it's business specific, but I think from a one and done job business, it's an absolute soul destroyer. Like, if you can't get a
Yeah.
client, and it's very important as well. What I suppose one thing I wouldn't do is work with brand new startup creators or businesses, because when you're trying to build a business, you need to work with businesses that have got a budget. And if you're trying to help startups who are like trying to bootstrap everything, your business is going to
Yeah.
struggle so hard because they haven't got the money to support you. Like with me now, I'm saving 80% of recruitment costs to a 10 million a year company, or 20
Yeah.
million a year company. Do you know what I mean? So
I want to stop you there. I don't want you to expand on that for a
yeah.
very specific reason.
Okay.
This is still a LinkedIn Marketing Mastery
Yeah.
podcast. So we're specifically about LinkedIn. This is one of the reasons why I'm closing this podcast and starting a new one, is because I don't want to be restricted to LinkedIn, because there's so much to growing a business, specifically when it comes to marketing, that being restricted to talking only about LinkedIn is very limiting. So I want to serve people at a higher level. And that's why. So Darren, you'll come to the new podcast and you'll share all those details later on. So let's stay on LinkedIn. And so I love that you were forced to bring this outside of LinkedIn. So, and this answers the question: is LinkedIn the ultimate tool to grow your business? No. So that's beautiful. Alex, do you want to share what you've learned from LinkedIn or what you've experienced that you wouldn't want to do it again in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always joke about my sole purpose of being on LinkedIn is not to be on LinkedIn. And I do really
love
mean
it.
that. I've been in the past, I guess it was back in 2024 where I actually very intentionally said, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to show up on LinkedIn every single day. I'm going to create content. I'm going to engage. I'm going to grow a network. And I did. And it was a lot. It was a lot, let me tell you. And if I would want to do that properly, it's a full-time job. It absolutely is a full-time job. So I did at a certain point, maybe 4 hours of writing comments and connecting with other people and getting into conversations and posting content. And that was just a lot. And I wouldn't do that again. But
I've
what
been
I
there.
also wouldn't do is not do it. Right. What I mean by that is, I believe the best way how we human beings learn is by actually doing things, right? Not mental masturbation, thinking about things, but actually doing the things. And I would never take that experience away from me, because without having done it, I wouldn't have known better. And I wouldn't be able to give a very informed conversation or informed advice or guidance to individuals who are in my daily conversations, who are also trying to make something on this platform, on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So the experience was absolutely necessary. I would not do it again. And I now know that I approach things a little bit differently. I still very much do show up almost daily. Like I'm probably here, maybe 352 days of the year in 2025 which is still a much better performance than in my previous 9 to 5 engagements. None of my former employers would be able to get me to spend so much time in the office. But one of the reasons why I enjoy doing this is because, as I said earlier in our conversation, the sheer fact and the act of creating and writing is something that I am absolutely not giving up. So if that is a LinkedIn post, that is how I continue with my writing practice. And I do think that continuing to write is one of the ways how I improve my strategic outset, how I improve how I approach things, how I improve my thinking, and how I process emotions, right? As well as connect with others. So why would I sacrifice that component? But we said on a couple of occasions that these things are very individual. And as Darren was saying, for him, it doesn't make sense, maybe. For me, it makes sense because of what I just said.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really good actually, and it brings me back to when I started on LinkedIn. I did the exact same thing, and I think most people will resonate with that, like spending most of their day on LinkedIn. But here's the thing, and everybody else you see, like let's put it, the gurus up on display, right? So everybody you see who's apparently making it, right? And hence you're following their advice basically, like the 3 steps they share on a post. So those, they seem to be making it, right? Because they have a lot of likes, they have a lot of attention on their publications. But that's what Alex just described. Those people are living on LinkedIn, and then that's where where this idea that everybody says my LinkedIn business, right? Because they live on LinkedIn. And then what is the business? How are they serving someone? There's only one way, which actually becomes a sort of a pyramid scheme, right? So they're selling you the coaching of what they do every day on LinkedIn. And they won't be selling you much of it, and they won't be helping you much with it, because everything what they can offer is basically a cohort, where you're or cohort or whatever they call it nowadays. I think that's the word, where you're basically consuming a digital program, and you get access to them live once a week or something, because obviously they're living on LinkedIn. They don't have more time to actually be serving a client properly. this this is my sort of rant for what I see on LinkedIn, and what actually pulled me apart from LinkedIn a couple of times already. So yeah, and with this, I think we're wrapping up. I'd love just to hear from you guys. If for those who are watching, what if they want to if they want to actually build a relationship with you, connect with you, do something, or if they resonated with what you're saying, what would be the best place to do so? LinkedIn.
You want to go first, Darren?
If they want to just connect with me and get in touch, just on LinkedIn, mate. That's so, like I said, great. I'm moving away from LinkedIn for talent sourcing because I use Indeed. I've got a premium account on Indeed, and I can find so many people on there. It's humongous, like compared to LinkedIn for talent. That's where I find my candidates. I am going on Facebook more for finding clients now, and finding that I can find engineering groups and companies and people on there as well, and they're a lot less defensive. The defense ain't up because they're not being constantly sold on Facebook. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm still active on LinkedIn, but yeah, most of my work's coming off there now.
And it's Darren Palatina on LinkedIn. You'll find the links in the description. So wherever you're watching this, you'll find the links. Alex?
Yeah, so I am very much still active on LinkedIn. That would be the easiest place to connect. I did recently endeavor into being more active on Instagram. It's an edge for me to go into more visual content creation. So that's another place. But ultimately, like my main long form connection and platform is tailored around the email list. I have an email list that people can subscribe to. There's a beautiful introduction in my own special way. There's an entryway on Substack, but yeah, that's really where I prefer to connect with people, because I feel
Out
email
of
is
my own heart.
still very much, you're not competing with algorithms, you're not competing with the endless feed. There is a little bit more
Anybody
spaciousness.
who's heard any one of our podcast episodes knows that I'm an email first kind of person. It's actually not even the email, it's the list, right? It's a list of contacts, and people just basically go back to think that it's the email list. Email is just the easiest point of contact to get from someone, right? So it's a way to stay in contact. It's a way to own the contacts who you're going to reach out to. So on LinkedIn, obviously you're dependent of them letting you explore the platform to reach out to anybody. In your email list or any list, if you can have a list of addresses and send letters, you can have a list of phone numbers and send SMSs or whatever. The point is that it's a list of contacts of people who have actually some interest in you because of the way they came into your list. And they gave you permission to contact them. That's the most important thing. They actually gave you permission. Yes, you can contact me whenever you want. So yeah, Alex, so how do they find your email list?
My email list is on Substack, or I'm just building out a new thing. I don't know if I can plug it in here, but I'm building out
Sure.
like an
Absolutely.
archetypal architecture quiz, which gives you a lot of the insight into knowing yourself, knowing what your creative energies and drives, where they're stemming from, so that you can really understand yourself on a level that you can build using, your insight into what are your strong suits, what are your zones of genius, and on the other side, what are the shadow sides of it. So that would be archetypearchitecture.creationcodes.co. And
Dude, we got to have a conversation about shorting URLs.
let's have that conversation.
All right. And anyway, all the links that are being mentioned will be in the description of this episode.
Yeah, the other one is the creation codes on Substack. That is much shorter.
All right. Cool. Awesome. As I said, this will be the last episode. I do believe that as LinkedIn marketing, we've had everything here. So you can find throughout our episodes, I believe this would be episode 46. So we've had all types of guests on, and we've shared every single perspective of marketing your business through LinkedIn, as far as I'm aware. So just go back to the old episodes. There's no point of repeating this information in my point of view. And again, I want to expand this to give you marketing with integrity, and marketing that is complete, that talks about email lists, how you build your list, how your list is your biggest asset, and how to protect your business from these platforms actually screwing you, all of that. So basically, if that's something that resonates with you, just subscribe to this podcast Substack. Go to createandearn.com /SM, and you'll find that the Substack. Subscribe there, and the next publication will have this episode on it, and we'll have the link to the new podcast, and you'll be able to follow. The premise of this is marketing with integrity, but we'll have guests who will be more or less on what we did today, sharing their experiences with how they went from starting a business to where they are right now in their business, wherever that is. It will be specific for service-based businesses, coaches, consultants, but obviously it applies for everything. So if this interests you, just follow the Substack, and you'll have all the information in the next publication. I can read Zinzel's comment. She said, "Well said, Darren, when you were talking about the business first, the family first, and all that, and how you structure your business." She says, "Since I got married, I do not have the energy to work with more than 2 clients unless I go to the agency model, of which in this season in my life, I'm finding more joy in mentoring and training my juniors." So yeah, it's again building your business around your purpose and your lifestyle, and not the other way around. And if you want to know more about this, Alex is the perfect person to talk to. And we'll have Alex on the new podcast specifically talking about this, and that will be fun.
Sounds
So
exciting.
thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Alex, for being here. Thank you, Darren.